Hi, you've reached the Talking Racewalking podcast. It's all about racewalking, of course. It's talking to racewalkers from around the world about racewalking. Join me, Noel Payne, a amateur racewalker in Canada, as I talk to elites, Olympians, record holders, masters walkers, and anybody who's out walking as fast as they can. Hi, so this is a section where I'd actually be talking to someone, a race walker. So this is where you can come in. If you know a race walker, you're a race walker, and you have an amazing story, I want to hear from you. So reach out, let's chat, let's get walking and talking. Hi everyone, welcome to another Talking Racewalking podcast. Today, I've got a guest on who's down south of me again. So American friend, Michael Roth. He is a race walking coach. He's got his master's in physical education, over 30 years of coaching experience with an emphasis on race walking. And he works a lot with high school race walkers. You can actually find him on YouTube. He's got his channel. I think it's high school race walking, or Michael, you'll have to remind people what it is, but that's what we're going to talk about today. Talk to Michael about how he got into things and talk about high school race walking in the United States. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you. No, nice to finally get to chat with you. I mean, we've been going back and forth, I guess, for a couple of years now online, and I think this is probably our first face-to-face.
Yeah, well, this is kind of why I like doing the podcast as well, because even communicating on social media, you don't often get to really talk to someone. So, folks, I'm sorry, I'm not going to show you the video, but Michael and I get to see each other. So it's a lot of fun for me.
No one needs to see my face. That's
no,
okay.
Same here.
There's enough of that out there.
But we're going to share the audio and we're going to keep it animated and have some fun. And I forgot to mention as well that when I was putting together sort of my sort of beginner book on race walking, just to try to share my experience and gives people something to start with before they jumped onto, real manuals of race walking. Michael agreed to put together a section on, judging race walking. So thanks again for that. So you can find his words in my book as well. So to get started, how did you get involved with race walking? Let's start there.
So that goes all the way back to the late 1980s. I was originally a baseball player and moved from one state to another, and baseball wasn't working out. And I was like, well, there's track over there, and I like to run, and I'm pretty quick. And so I moved over to the track team. And my best friend in high school was what then was called a junior divisions back then were different than they are now. Now junior would be considered under 20, but back then it was you've never won an open championship, so they classified you as junior. But he was the junior national champion at 3,000 meters, and he was one of sort of sliding a little sideways with it. That was back when New York still had race walking in their high school program for boys. It had gone away at the state level, but there were still pockets of it in certain counties that were really competitive. And that area of the country fed most of the national team for a couple of decades. So back to this friend, he was really good, and I had always, looked at track as something that, I realized I had a ceiling. And so I wanted to learn all the events so that I could do them and possibly, get into coaching, because I enjoyed the coaching aspect of it, even as a high school athlete. And his father, between my junior and senior years over the summer, taught me how to race walk. And I messed around with it for a little bit, never really did anything. And then when I got to college, it was in our college conference meet, and this was actually an NCAA situation. It was mostly Division III schools, and there were two conferences in the New York, Connecticut area that had race walking as part of their conference championships. And the my college coach said, "Hey, does anybody know how to do this? You'll get a varsity letter and you'll get to travel to all the meets." And I was like, hand went up and I was like, yeah, I kind of know how to do this. I haven't really raced in it, but I know the event, I can do it. And so that began a 30 something year relationship with race walking.
I love it. Now did you, how much race walking did you do? Now it's, I know you're the coach, and I think this is an interesting uh sort of chat as well as somebody whose real focus is race walking in terms of coaching. So how much race walking did you yourself actually do sort of after that sort of college stint?
Um, so as I got when I was in college, I was mostly running, and then I would jump into the race walks for, and I probably was walking 10 or 15 miles a week just to practice the technique, but I was mostly running 400 meters.
Yep.
Had moved up a little bit into the 800 back in high school. It was 200, 400, and then I went 400, 800 and was
Yep.
running cross country. And I had moderate success, but when on the race walking end, I was scoring doing minimal work. And so after my sophomore year, I told the coach, I said, like, I'm race walking 100% from here on. So my
That's cool.
junior and senior years in college was 100% race walking, as far as training was concerned. And, when you focus on something, you get better at it. It's so I improved, and I really wasn't ever a threat at any level outside of the region. I was above average as an athlete, but I race walked competitively on and off from 1988 until today. So I don't do as much competing now as I used to because it's more officiating um, and coaching and managing a club and those things. And well, but I'll jump into road races that are unjudged and use that as my outlet now. But it's been since 1988 basically.
That's cool. So, and I like how it's interesting talking to folks from the US as well, because you talk about, the fact that there is some high school programs that used to be in the school program. And I know it's not a great situation, but as far as I know in Canada, it's never been basically really in any high school program. I think we might have it out in BC, which is really
Hmm.
where most of our race walkers have come from. But yeah, we've never really seen it. I never grew up even knowing what race walking was, basically, other than see it on television. Most of the country, we don't have it at in the school program at all. Um, so I think I can relate to the fact of uh, where it is in the school program really does produce young race walkers, which can feed into, the programs outside of schools, those provincial meets and then university. And then if you've got a university program that includes it, it that's the funnel to the elite level. And without that, there really is a gap. What is from a coaching perspective now, having done some race walking, having been there in the 80s, um, what was the situation when you entered things, and how has it changed, improved, or gotten worse from your perspective?
The big sort of hang up with this lies entirely with the coaches. There used to be buy-in from the coaches
Like to
in
include the
certain
sport?
areas of the country. I'm sorry,
And to include the sport, you mean, in terms of coaches and
and
money?
to include race walking
Yeah.
as part of track and field. Um, there's always been an undercurrent of the same sort of mindset of exclusion that you see between social groups, and you can insert any social group that you want in there. Whether I don't want to go into all like the crazy politics of
Yeah.
all the different social groups, but if you think of you could throw religion in there, you could throw gender identity into it, but all the same ways and methods that people exclude one group over another are used to exclude race walking from track and field.
Okay.
The
No,
same methods, the same methodology. It's a closed mindset, and there it used to be more of an open mindset, and that was a lot of hard work by people who built the programs in the high schools in the 60s and 70s, and those minds closed as those coaches retired and passed along,
so
and the coaches who
so you
replaced
found
them.
you found that sort of it got better, but then as is that generation that was convinced, that to include race walking, once they kind of went away, it was another battle again with another generation of coaches.
It is a constant battle, and the amount of open-mindedness in the track and field coaching community, it's like looking through the eye of a needle. It's so tiny.
Now, why do you
And
think that is, Michael?
it's how they've been taught by the ones before them. And it's just this mindset of, well, they're not athletes, they don't belong, they are less than, just permeates the sport. And um, I've seen it for so long. It's just I'm just personally just at the point where I don't suffer the fools anymore. I call them out on it. But it's a hard thing, it's a hard line to balance, because the calling people out on that too much can cause problems.
Yeah, you push too far, and the back goes
Yeah.
up again. No, it's interesting. I've encountered a little bit of it just in terms of not with coaches, but just the community in general. Um, Not overly negative. Like in my community, I get like, high fives or wow, that's amazing. That kind of stuff. You do get that. But trying to convince either just an average runner or friends, there definitely is, whether it's spoken or not, or whether I even saw it, there is sort of some, I don't know whether they think it's not a real sport or it's just too weird. There is something kind of kicking around in terms of, what people think of race walking, whether they realize it or not until someone asks them. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it must be that same thing with the coaches, whether they've brought up with, just that whole thing. Well, it's just the silly sport. It's not real. It's not real, or they're walking weird. So I don't know what it is either. So you feel that in the coaching community as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, and the coaches call the shots
Yeah,
for everything that happens in the sport. At every single level, it's coaches that are making the vast majority of decisions, and they for a good percentage of it, they just either don't want to be bothered, or they're afraid to admit that they don't know how to coach the event.
yeah, that is interesting. So in the United States now, you said in the past there was, New York had it included in their high school program. What's the kind of general situation now? How many states or areas have race walking as part of the school program?
Um, it's there's a couple of big areas, and then there's a couple of little smatterings of this and that all over the place. Um, Maine has it outdoors for boys and girls.
At the high school level?
Yeah, at the high school level. New York has it only indoors for the girls,
Okay.
and there's been a long, slow push to bring it back for the boys, and hopefully they will do it and then extend the girls to the outdoor season as well, because that used to be a thing and it got pulled back. And that was 100% on the New York State high school coaches that did that. They
Interesting.
just did not want to be bothered.
And at your university, I know you're mainly focused on the high school, but I mean, I'm sure you're well aware of like sort of collegiate university level in the States. Is there, when they jump up, is it included in that level of sport as well, or is it sort of patchy as well?
Um, so just going back to the high school end a little bit, there are a couple of areas of the country that you'll see a little bit of activity. Maryland and Virginia have a little bit of stuff going on where you'll see it in a meet or two every season. Um, Alabama has I don't remember I think it's Birmingham, has it in their city championships, indoors and outdoors, but at no other meets, which is just strange. But I'm happy that they have it. Good. And then there's a couple of other places around the country that you'll see it in a meet here and a meet there, but there's no real developed program. And then segueing back to your question about the colleges is there are a few NCAA schools which really have supported the event over the years. And sadly, we're going to be losing one of those schools next year. But that's Marist in New York, Mansfield in Pennsylvania, and I am drawing a blank on the third one. Um, it'll probably come to me again, but there's going to be a coaching change at Mansfield, and so the ability for walkers to compete for that school is going to disappear. And outside of the handful of NCAA schools that have supported the event because their coaches are open-minded and some of them have had experience in the event personally,
Yep.
it's the NAIA and only certain NAIA schools. And there is a every single year at the coaches convention, there is a group of 2 to 3 coaches who just scream louder over everybody else, and they come up with these formulated proposals to change the event structure, and they get really creative with their wording. But every single time they do this, it's just a really lame attempt to remove race walking from the NAIA. But there's about 30 to 40 schools in the NAIA that are really solid supporters of it, and they the varying levels of experience and knowledge, but they're out there trying, and so good on them.
Yeah, and we see it down here. I mean, because there's not many opportunities, we usually our Canadian athletes actually compete in those NAIA competitions as well, because really there isn't.
Yeah.
I was just double checking while we were chatting, trying to pull it up because involved in university sport and stuff like that. I do not believe we have race walking at all in our sort of Canadian university sport track and field program. I've never seen it
Yeah, I
at
don't
all.
believe it. I don't believe it does exist, and that's why schools like UBC and a couple others have been in the NAIA, and I mean they've torn the place up on and
Yeah,
off over the years.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's it. What's surprising for Canada, I mean, we are basically 10 times or 10 times as small as the States. So you guys are 10 times bigger than we are. And we just have this sort of, sparkly group in one province, in one little area that has shown a lot of success, which is very unusual. I mean, I look at the States and wonder why you guys haven't had more success more recently. I mean, you've been stronger in the past, but I mean, Canada is so much smaller. So I think we've been very lucky. Um, so getting back to that, the high school problem and the collegiate problem, what do you think the solution is to? Because I mean,
Um,
here's the interesting thing, because I had the same thoughts as many others when I talked to folks, because I think Canada and the US tend to sort of look at each other. And I did a recent podcast with Declan Tingay,
okay.
and they don't have it in their high school programs. They
They
don't
they
have
have little athletics in Australia, and it's an amazing program.
exactly. So their thing is the fact that it's not in the schools, but there's another program that
Hmm.
has it. So I think when we talk about it being a high school or a school program, that's how we see it in Canada, United States. But we can see another example where that doesn't necessarily have to be the case to be successful. What are your thoughts?
Um, Ideally, the programs in the US would sort of work cooperatively, where there's the Junior Olympic program, which is similar to Little Athletics in Australia.
I've seen that.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's age group track and field, and they go from 8 years old, and there's really 2 programs now. There's the AAU, which is single age competition. It used to be 2-year age groups, and I guess it was 5 or 6 years ago they broke it apart to single age, and it's helped them out a lot, and it's developmentally more appropriate for their athletes because you get a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old competing against each other, and puberty hits, and things go sideways for some of these younger kids, and they just can't compete, and you lose some of the kids.
Yeah.
But the AAU has a single year age groups from 8 through all the way through 18. Actually, 19-year-olds can still compete depending upon birth year and all kinds of formulas. And the same thing with USA Track and Field, which has 2-year age groups, and it's pretty much, the same number of events, the same event distances, and the like. But the same problem that you see in the high schools is endemic in the AAU, and they're even more vocal about it. And just you're familiar with Safe Sport because you have it in Canada as well.
Yeah, yeah.
The just open violations of Safe Sport for child abuse that goes on publicly towards athletes in the race walk it's insane. Um, I I mean, if I just spent time just looking at those kind of online posts, I could spend my entire day, every day, just looking at the abuse that happens to athletes from race walkers. And occasionally, again, I'll call it out where it's important, and depending upon who's the person doing it, because I know a lot of the personalities. But the kids are afraid to do it
Now,
because the coaches treat them poorly, and then the athletes copy what they see from the adults.
right.
And then it just festers and continues on and on and on. It becomes like a virus.
And I think anybody listening will probably get what you're referring to. And if I can kind of mention, you're talking about the fact that people will start alluding to race walking as going beyond just the fact that it looks funny or it's silly, but maybe indicating that perhaps your orientation or other things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is,
And
I have seen it as well.
And at meets, you'll see coaches, parents, and other athletes openly mocking athletes in the race walk from the stands.
Really?
And on the competition area, like, so say you got, and I'm just spitballing here, say you got kids on the long jump who are the runways right next to the track, they'll sit there pointing and laughing and mocking the kids in the event. I mean, and that's abuse, that's bullying. And there is just no place in the sport for that at all. And if it was reversed, everybody would be losing their minds if they were mocking somebody in, the long jump, for just to pick on the long jump for no reason.
Yeah, no, completely. I think you're right. I haven't seen it here, but then I came to race walking a little bit later, but I have seen it. You see it online with YouTube videos. You see how people talk it. You see people very hesitant when you mention, do you want to try race walking? Especially if they're not in the masters age group. So it's like,
even if they are.
Yeah, I agree. No, and that is unfortunate. I'm not even sure where that comes from. I kind of can guess at the origins, but it is very unfortunate. So, and it's unfortunate to hear that it is that prevalent in the States. I mean, I think the thing is, what I always say when I'm explaining the difference between Canada and the United States is there's just 10 times more. So if we have one person doing it, you've got 10.
Yep.
And I think that's probably why you see more of it. Yeah.
And that's not to say that all of the stuff that has been put online is meant in that, that sort of mindset,
Negative way.
And done in a negative way, because you have to be able to laugh at yourself. And some of the the sort of oddball cracking at race walking videos are really well done. They're not meant to offend. I mean, if you go back to, there was an episode of the TV show Malcolm in the Middle.
Yes, the famous episode, yeah.
And they brought in US race walkers. You can see Kirk Clausen is in there, Philip Dunn, I believe Tim Seaman was in it. But the whole training center that we used to have out in San Diego, all of those athletes were involved in that episode on one level or another. And they did it, tongue in cheek, let's make fun of ourselves. And it was really well done. But again, it was making fun of it, but in a really adult way without putting people down. And it can be done. And you have to be able to laugh at yourself, because sometimes it looks silly. We'll be honest here. We look ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think everybody has to be able to laugh at themselves. And I mean, we can all agree. I mean, it's not walking, it's not running. It's something in between. It looks slightly unusual, especially if it's not done smoothly. There's not all of us are elite level, smooth, fluid race walkers. So yeah, exactly. It can draw some attention. So moving away from the negative, I think we are facing an uphill battle right now. I think everybody's agreeing right now that really there's an elite level of race walking, and and every country seems to be able to field a decent number of walkers, but especially in Canada, US, we're really losing the battle in terms of having another group that's being funneled up to that level or being able to provide them the opportunity.
Yeah, the base of the pyramid in both of our countries is extremely narrow.
Yeah, it very much is. Um, what are some positive things you're seeing out of your high school race walking? What do the kids think of race walking these days?
So the more that they're treated just like everyone else, the more they they get comfortable in their own skin and are not afraid to, sort of wear the RW on their shirt, like that they're proud of it rather than it being a scarlet letter. Um, for those of you who remember that book
I do.
from back in history class. Um, excuse me. Um, so that's sort of one of the reasons that I've gone in and attempted to do so much social media stuff is to sort of normalize race walking within the track and field community and to allow the kids to feel like they're just as good as the other kids on their team, that they're no different. They just happen to go around the track in a different way. They're not jumping over things. They're just, making sure they got, 1 foot down at all times.
Yeah, no,
And
I, I
it's helped those kids a lot, I think.
I think that's great. And I've seen, if you haven't been, what is your YouTube channel called again? Just so people can find you there.
Uh, High school race walk, if you go to youtube.com/HS racewalk.
Yeah, so just type in HS Race Walk, you'll find it. Michael's got amazing videos. He's got chats with young race walkers, but he's got playlists of YouTube videos that are great to learn. Race walking, just everything's there. And I love what you do. I've been trying to sort of mimic it with the social media channels I have in terms of for the Canadian community, but well, just getting race walking videos or posts out there that people can see it and realize it's not sometimes what they envision. It's not Malcolm in the middle all the time, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah. No, to end this off, I want to thank you for coming on and chatting with me. It's good fun. What do you see as the future of race walking? Just not only for high school race walking, but what do you think of the current situation of things? We've got, you can boil it down to sort of one answer, but I mean, race walking has dramatically changed since the 80s. We've had rule changes in the 90s. We've had super shoes come in. We've had the questions about, do we use technology because people are clearly coming off the ground more, but the speed has increased and everything else. What do you think the future of race walking is moving forward? Like from 2024 going forward, what do you picture race walking is going to evolve into, or how is it going to change in your perspective?
Um, I think a lot of it depends upon the generation after us, based upon our current age.
Michael's
And
saying we're old, I think is what
we're
we
yes,
say. Yeah, we're
we're
old. Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
We're getting to the point where we're not as relevant and able to connect effectively with the athletes who are there today. Um, the athletes who are in high school and college and have just left college and are still competing at some level, it's going to be dependent upon what they do, because the people who have been, dragging the chain or pulling the horse that's pulling the cart for the last 20, 30, 40 years, um, they're not getting any younger. And a lot of that is on the officiating end too, but the
Yeah.
coaching end and doing all of these other things to keep the sport viable. Um, so it if for the people who are listening to this, if you love this event, you have got to step up. It's on some level, be an
Yeah.
event organizer, be a coach, be an official, be all of the above. At some point, you'll probably hand off your social media accounts or mothball them. I know that I would love to hand them off at someday and let someone continue to run them. And you know what? There you go. There's the channels. There's there's all of the accounts. Here's all of the statistical data going back 30 whatever years. Have at it. Continue. Good luck to you. And if you have a question, go ahead and ask. But at some point, if there are people out there who love race walking and they want it to continue, it's going to be on them.
Yeah, no,
Because the
I
people
agree.
who've been doing the work for the last 20, 30, 40 years, they're not going to be there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I don't like to admit my age, but yeah, and you look at the coaches, you look at the officials, and in a sport that's really dependent on judges, you can't run a race walk event without a judge. Whereas a 400 meter, I mean, it's a little bit easier to assemble and put it together. So I hear that, and anybody listening, yeah, we need you. We need everybody involved, but we definitely need those who have either competed at the elite level
Yeah.
if they have a passion for it, to help keep it
Yeah.
alive.
And I mean, and, just to sort of open it up wider than that is you don't have to be a national champion, a
Yeah,
league champion, or whatever
yeah,
champion to fill these other roles. Every year in New York, there's 500 to 600 high school girls who compete in race walking. Any one of them is more than qualified to do the majority of this stuff at some point in their life.
I
You don't
agree.
have to be a super athlete to be a good coach. I wasn't a super athlete, not at any level. I've won my share of races here and there, but it was more out of being in the right place at the right time
Yeah, no, I agree.
and a little bit of help from the judges.
Exactly. I think we forget that. I think oftentimes we look at track and field, you do see that. It's not always, the former Olympians that are the coaches or the ones that are
Yeah.
making the
It's
meets.
rarely those athletes.
Exactly. It's not those ones that are making the meets possible or running them. So I agree. Thank you again for coming on, Michael. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
And maybe we'll have another podcast soon enough. I'd love to stay in touch as well, to be able to bring on some more younger race walkers and talk to them about their experiences too. So I'll tap into that in the future. And everyone else, please go check out Michael's channel on YouTube. Find out what he does. And if you're a young race walker, go find him. If he's not in your area, I'm sure he can direct you to someone else who can coach or help you if you're a young race walker looking to get into the sport. So thanks again, and happy race walking, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Noel.
That's it, folks. The end of the podcast. No walkers have been harmed in the recording of this podcast. And of course, at the moment, we have no sponsors or supporters at this point to fund all this amazing podcasting. But if you're out there and have a race walk company that produces some sort of race walk apparel product or something you think race walkers would love, get hold of us. We'd love to have you on board. Give us a holler.